Welcome back to the channel. My name is Steven. I'm a pharmacist and I own 52 units of real estate. So I had two questions in the comments asking about my asset protection. So I want to answer them in this video. So the first one is it easy to set up that trust in Corporation Wyoming and the LLCs and get them all into the structure like you mentioned? Is it something that you can do on your own online, or do you need to engage an attorney or something like that? So to kind of summarize my video and check it out, I have a couple of videos talking about my asset protection plan. Just search asset protection on my channel and you'll find a bunch of videos talking about that. But pretty much how my structure is, I have a trust which owns my holding company, which is based in Wyoming, and that holding company will then own the LLC that then owns my apartment complex. So for example, I have a trust. So for example, if I have a 20 unit apartment complex that's owned by an LLC, and that LLC is owned by the holding company LLC, and that holding company LLC is owned by the trust, right? So that's the structure. And what helped me get this is I watched a lot of videos on YouTube, like learning about asset protection, first of all, but then I did engage an attorney to help me set this up initially. So they helped me set up my trust. I think it roughly costs around 1,500 to 2,000. And then they helped me set up my holding company in Wyoming, which is about 800 bucks. And then the each individual LLC was roughly around 400 to 500 bucks each, right? So they would help set up that structure. Um, the attorney helped me strategize. Well, I researched a lot of it on YouTube myself, but the attorney kind of validated what I've watched on YouTube. You know, trust but verify, and to set all that up, that's what the cost was. It is possible to do this yourself online, right? Like a popular site is like LegalZoom, where they just have like templates, and the attorneys use templates too. But it could be a little bit complicated. So like, I'm not an asset protection attorney. I just had one set up for me. But pretty much when you set up your trust, there's a bunch of questions that they're going to ask you, and I'm pretty sure like the templates from like LegalZoom cover all that, right? So like, how do you want to store your assets, right? You like, let's say you own 5 properties and you own a trust. You have to make sure that the trust owns the properties, right? If you don't have like an LLC, for example. Um, so they ask you a bunch of questions like, what do you want to do in case of death? What do you want to do in case of disability? What do you want to do in case of disagreement? If you pass away and your kids are a certain age, how do you want to control the asset? That's all what trust does, right? It just designates a trustee who's managing the trust, who can then allocate what to do, or you can tell the trustee what to do, right? So, like for example, if some people pass away young, you have a bunch of assets, you don't want your kids inheriting all your assets right away. You could say, well, the kid will get this house when they're 25, or they'll get this lump sum money when they're 30, or they'll get this money if they, um, whatever, got a doctorate level degree. So you can delineate that is. It's just a trust is just a way to basically avoid probate court, right? So they have a lot of questions. It's a long document. It's like 40 pages, right? Something like that. The holding company, it's called a cope entity, and I'm blanking out on what that means. I used to know it, but it's called cope for short. You can probably Google that. But it's basically a holding company, LLC, where the point of it is that it protects your assets from you, right? So if I were to run a red light and accidentally, hit somebody and they try to come after you, then they it will prevent them from going after my properties because they're holding a holding company. Well, for LLC, it basically protects me from the tenant. So if the tenant were to try to slipped and fell, typical example, and try to come after you, they just take whatever's in the LLC, right? So on LegalZoom, they do LLCs that are pretty easy, but you just have to make sure to designate the owners correctly, right? So like for example, the owners, 100% owners of my LLCs for my real estate is typically the holding company, right? So for example, my LLC will 100% own, I just call it Blue LLC owns my 20 unit, and then my Color holding company owns the Blue LLC, and then the Rainbow Trust owns the Color holding company, right? So like you could do it yourself, but like once you set it up once, it's pretty easy. And if you want, like for me now, since I have the initial structure in place, if I want to buy more real estate, I can open up my own LLC on LegalZoom, for example, and then just designate my holding company as 100% owner, right? So if there's any doubt, you just can pay an attorney, right? It's typically double the cost if you don't want to deal with that. But if you're more of a DIY person, you could do it on LegalZoom potentially. There's pros and cons, right? So for me, that's how I set up. So to summarize all that, I basically had an attorney help me set up the trust, the holding company, and the LLCs initially. But now that if I want to open another LLC, I'd probably just do it myself, right? That's so I do both. Um, and basically, the next question is how much extra money do you need to spend on an accountant for these holding companies, living trust, umbrella insurance, management company, besides your LLC, initial setup costs, and yearly spending on these protections? So to clarify, I don't use an accountant for my taxes. Believe it or not, I do all my taxes myself using TurboTax. I have videos talking about that. For me, I like to know the law myself and read it myself. And certainly, like, yes, I might be missing some stuff, but I feel like I know a decent amount because I've been doing my taxes for 7 years, and I feel like I know a little bit more than your average CPA, just because I own all these assets. Like I had a friend using a CPA, and they didn't even know my friend qualifies as a real estate professional, and it literally just took me talking to him on the phone one day. And I was like, dude, you qualify as a real estate professional because you work full time. Your wife stay at home and she's managing your rental properties. Like there you go. If most of her time is real estate, she qualifies as a real estate professional. Like she was like, oh wow, like yeah, like that's literally it. Or she's managing your Airbnb, so it's active income. It can offset your active income. And he was like, what? My CPA never told me that, right? That's why I like to always know stuff so that I can always trust but verify, right? So don't get me wrong, like there are certain advantages of having a CPA, but like for me, I like to at least be informed and know. And TurboTax, I think it's pretty user friendly. I mean, the first year it's a little bit hard, but now once I've done it a few times, it gets easier and easier and easier every time, right? So it's just that first time it's hard, but they give you a lot of examples, and they have forums where you can ask questions, or you even have a number that you can call and you can ask questions, right? And lucky my uncle is a CPA, or not a CPA, but he's been doing his own taxes for like 30 years too. He owns a bunch of real estate. He owns an S corporation as well, so I always pick his brain. All right, so I don't have an accountant, but generally speaking, if you own LLCs, your accountant's going to charge you more, right? It's going to cost more. I don't know what that is, but it's more than if you're just doing it for yourself. So for living trust, the cost of living trust is about 1,500 to 2,000, right? If you get an estate attorney. Umbrella insurance. So if it's a personal umbrella insurance policy, you can get it from 1 million, 2 million, 5 million, 10 million. It ranges from like 500 to like maybe $1,000. If it's a commercial insurance umbrella policy, they're a little bit more expensive, probably double that from my experience. So that's the cost. And initial setup costs, I kind of addressed it earlier, but trust is about 1,500, 2,000. Holding company was about 800, and each LLC is about $400. And yearly spending on this. So in California, for every LLC that you own, even if it doesn't operate in California, right? If I live in California and I own LLCs that operate in Oklahoma, that operate in Alabama, doesn't matter. I have to pay the California Franchise Tax Board, I think $800 a year in taxes minimum per LLC. So if you own 5 LLCs, you're gonna pay a minimum $800 each. So that's $4,000 a month or a year, right? Sorry, a year. So that's the cost of doing business in California, right? So I went a little bit too crazy with LLCs and I kind of scaled back. But you want to balance between having LLCs for protection, but not going too crazy where you're paying $800 a month. But it's just the cost of doing business once again, right? Like that's the cost of doing business. So hopefully this answers your question about asset protection and taxes and the cost. I know I covered a lot here, so just check out my videos about asset protection on my channel. Check the videos about taxes on this channel. I do share a lot about my experience on that. Best bet is to talk to watch a bunch of YouTubes on video to get a baseline. Reach out to a asset protection attorney. You can reach out to a tax attorney, a CPA to get a second opinion. I'm none of those. I just do it myself and I learned on the fly. So let me know any other questions. If you're looking at buying multifamily with some guidance, check out my mentorship program down below. Please share this video with somebody who you think will benefit from this. Like, comment, subscribe. Hope to see you next one. Thank you.